Basically, my like general question, it was kind of a comment, but I wanted to like know like in your like approach towards liberalism, both of y'all, you usually like go down like the track of like social contract theory, like explaining how like in Brother Hijab's book, he talks about like how human rights are like uh basically social contract is conducive to the hudud and all of like the penal laws in Islam, etc. Right? So I feel like what are your thoughts on the harm principle? Because when I talk to like most people who espouse liberalism, they go down like a general like harm principle like route where they say like I'm not harming anyone else, thus I should be able to do whatever I want. I feel like that like kind of like scapegoats like the entire question like at hand. Because like I read this like paper by this professor, I forgot his name, at UC San Diego. It was a really good paper, kind of like about how their conception of like the harm principle differs from like John Stuart Mill or like other proponents of liberalism when they actually have like a prioritization of rights. And it's not like just pure harm principle because they understand that would like limit liberty much more than like they would like to say. So, why do you guys think it would be productive to discuss the harm principle and kind of like expose how hollow it is in like dawah or whatever?
I think we don't necessarily disagree with everything in the harm principle, first and foremost, as Muslims, because we do have a principle within Islam, which is la darar wa la dirar. There is no harming and reciprocating harm. Quran says, وَلَا تُلْقُوا بِأَيْدِيكُمْ إِلَى التَّهْلُكَةِ, and do not let your own hands be the cause of your destruction. Now, what kind of, so that's not harming yourself, and obviously that's in a way it's against the harm principle because with the liberal conception of it, will conceive of a situation where someone's harming themselves. So yeah, in terms of that, it's exactly what on utilitarianism, what J.S. Mill tried to do, which is to give a basis to his ideology of utilitarianism, and that's what he admits he can't do on an objective level. And so the idea really is putting the burden of proof on them and allowing them or giving them a chance to believe in what to explain what they believe in and telling us why they believe in what they believe in. Not to say that we disagree with everything they say in terms of the harm principle, we agree with it. Like in our stance, we believe in parts of the harm principle, we disagree with other parts. So the part we disagree with is that human being, the individualistic part, that he is the best, human being is best to judge his own affairs. We don't believe in that. We believe that Allah is the best to judge his own affairs. Allah knows everything and he's the most wise and the most knowledgeable and he's the best one to know our affairs. God is, the all-knowledgeable one is the best one to know our affairs. And so it's that individualistic presupposition, which that we are the best for our own affairs, which we need to question that as well, because the harm principle is not just a principle; it's got presuppositions, which is that we know what's best for us.
Yeah.
How do you prove that? How do you prove that we know what's best for us? And there's even discussions within liberalism, which are kind of interesting, like the communitarian individualism discussion, and not only just in relation to rights but responsibilities as well. Like there's obviously Michael Sandel, interestingly, he's written stuff about this. He's coming from a liberal paradigm, really, what we would consider a liberal paradigm. But he's the question of communitarianism now. To what extent is the community responsible for, or should we be responsible to the community? And to what extent does the community have an impact on what we are? We're interdependent, not dependent. We're not independent. And so the starting point is different because now you're going to have to dismantle this individualistic presupposition. And it's easy to do that when you really think about it, when you interrogate it. But the point I'm making really is this, is that the building blocks are as follows. Hedonism, number one. Okay, so hedonism, the hedonistic principle. I mean, John Locke talks about it, but it's something which runs all the way through from John Locke to John Rawls, even though he had a different way of systemizing or kind of coming to a reason why he had this whole abstract thought process. Put John Rawls to the side. But between the two, between John Locke and John Rawls, you have this hedonistic principle. Hedonistic principle is you need to prioritize your pleasures. Maximize pleasure and minimize pain. That's what it is. That's in the form of utilitarianism, and then it's kind of refined by the harm principle. First thing is, how do we prove that the hedonistic principle is true? Why is it true? This is what John Stuart Mill tried to do, what many of them try to do, and they all stumbled with this. They all fumbled with this. And I've got, you said you read my book. I've actually written something you can download for free called The Problems of Liberalism. You can download that free, and it goes through, why it is and how it is that they stumbled with this. So that's one thing. The other thing is the individualistic presupposition with the harm principle that we know what's best for us, which is now being questioned from within with communitarianism. And then finally, well, we're not going to disagree with every part of the harm principle because we believe in a kind of harm principle. But like beautifully, I mean, a lot of the usuli scholars in Islamic jurisprudence, they talk about when they talk about harm and stuff like it's very interesting how they put it. They say like, let's start with the harms to the dunya and the akhirah. Let's prioritize ukhrawi, dunya and ukhrawi, like the dunya and the hereafter harms. But that's metaphysical. That's something that these people are never gonna, because it's almost a materialistic presupposition there as well. Like it's a secular materialistic presupposition. We have a religious eschatological presupposition with there's a hereafter, there's this and that. So everything is different. And but if they insist on their morality being true, they have to be able to demonstrably prove every part of what they believe in, from the hedonistic principle to the individualistic presupposition to the harm principle itself. All of those things are evidence, and they know it. And that is the reason why John Rawls, by the way, after a long, how many hundreds of years between John Locke and John Rawls? We're talking about 300 years, something like that. Why have they continued to change the way? Why have liberal theorists, theoreticians change the way they basically have a theory for justice? Why? Now, this John Rawls has a book called The Theory of Justice, and he starts from a different starting point. Why did he feel the need to do that if liberalism already had the answers? You see, if the hedonistic principle and the utilitarianism and the harm principle was all good enough, why did John Rawls, after he's a liberal, right? And he's the last contributor, like major contributor of the liberal tradition, like huge, like obviously there's people that came after him, but he's one of the only ones that you could do a PhD on, like let's say, put it that way. And he changed the whole mechanism. If you go and research John Rawls, he has an entire different system of finding out what's right and what's wrong, in a sense, than the hedonistic and utilitarian ways of past. And in fact, he actually criticized the utilitarian ways of John Mill and so on. And so if he did that, he must have known that there were some issues in proving what he's trying to prove. But yeah, this is from a theoretical perspective. And so bring people into that and let them know that it's completely their whole ideology, their dominant ethic of the West is balanced on a spider's web.
Exactly. What I've noticed is like people free ride on like something like is kind of like undisputable. When you hear like the harm principle, like do everything except for harming someone else, it's so attractive that they go towards it, but they don't understand that like the whole discussion about like morality itself is like what constitutes as harm. And like for us as Muslims, we like are like scholars, are like people in jurisprudence decide like what is harm and what isn't. That's something within like the fold of Islam. But like the whole question is like what is harm, what isn't harm, and that kind of gets circumvented like when people impose.
Add to that, it's beautiful because I was reading something in Mustasfa Abu Ghazali, and he in his fasl on maslaha, he actually goes into so much deep details. Like, wallahi, all these conversations they have in consequentialism now, and liberal consequentialism, and all that stuff they're having today, like in the last 100 years, have been had. Like, for example, he mentions a tatarrus, which is the idea of shielding yourself with innocent bystanders in war, where you'd be beaten and this, and they go into so much details, and that's why I believe like sometimes people think that Islam is categorical and absolute in terms of its morality, but I disagree with that. It is obviously objective, but it's there's, I believe in something called, and I've mentioned this in some of my works, Sharia consequentialism, and that is usul fiqh basically. فمن اضطر في مخمصة وغير متجانف لإثم فلا جناح عليه. The Quran says whoever is compelled in and so on, like, and or to eat pork or to drink alcohol, then that's, but that itself is a principle, which is الضرورات تبيح المحظورات, which is that certain darura, which is necessities, can make something halal haram and haram halal, and all of these things are interplaying with each other, and a lot of it is hinged on darura and harm and physical harm and so on and so forth. All of this have been discussed by our scholars in the past, and I find it really interesting that they're catching up to this. But it's not books of usul, man. It's really interesting.
I like the term Sharia consequentialism. I think that needs to be popularized. Does that answer your question, brother Danish?
Yes, completely. Thank you for answering my question.
I think I went everywhere, man. And this is because it's something that I spent a lot of time thinking about, so I obviously had a lot to say about it. But yeah, if for more references, because I've actually written something on it, maybe like 6,000 words or something, I don't know. I've written something. Just write my name on Google and write "Problems of Liberalism."
Okay,
and you'll get the references there.
Yeah. All right, Jazakallah khair, brother Danish.